Then.
My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow the Noble Lady Baroness Altman and to join in this debate that is obviously at an absolutely core area for the Green Group. And I do want to offer a reflection, a reassurance to the Noble Lady Baroness Laura, who in this very wide and broad spread debate around your Lordship's House is the only one who has offered some kind of support for the government's position. The Noble Lady said that, particularly looking at protecting wild animals, she wanted to see divergence for the better. Well, of course, if we threw out this bill, if this bill disappeared, as everyone from the Noble Viscount Stansgate to the Noble Lord opposite, many Noble Lords opposite have said, the Noble Lord Comat, to, I think I've counted today, 12 members of our crossbench colleagues who've spoken and indicated that was either explicitly or explicitly their desire. If this bill was thrown out, DEFRA would have more time, vastly more time, to work on improving and strengthening existing regulations. So that would be what the Noble Lady's wishing for. The best way to do that would be to get rid of this bill. Now, I think so many people have said, and I've just picked up the Noble Duke, the Duke of Wellington, have pointed out that the reassurances we heard yesterday, the reassurances we're expecting today, again perhaps from the Noble Lord Benyon from the front bench, reassurances are fine, but they have to be on the face of the bill. And that, in fact, in this area, is what Amendment 37, in the name of the Noble Lady Baroness Hayman, also Lord Krebs and Baroness Bakewell, to which I've added my name to make it cross and non-party. Dare I say, this is an authoritative, if not comprehensive, list of the main areas of green and animal welfare concern. And I'd like to essentially associate the Green Group with it, with almost everything said by the Noble Ladies, Baroness Hayman and Bakewell, and indeed Parmenter and the Noble Lord Krebs, except I'm going to disagree on one point, which is the Noble Lady Baroness Hayman said we have high standards in the UK. The Noble Lady Baroness Parmenter said we have stringent targets. Well, I would say we have a basic inadequate minimum of standards. And picking up on the point from the Noble Lady Baroness Altman just made and expanding on it a little, Clause 15, there was much discussion in the last debate that we had to wait till we get to debate Clause 15. But let's look at that letter. I'm afraid I'm going to go back to the famous letter, and I've hand-transcribed a paragraph from it because I think it is so important. And that says, it will clarify that it is possible for additional regulations and higher standards to be introduced through the powers to revoke or replace, so long as the package of reform contains within each statutory instrument does not increase the overall regulatory burden for that particular subject area. Now, the Noble Lady Baroness Altman referred to the fact about what about new scientific discoveries, say about water. Well, to be really concrete about that, think about new scientific discoveries we've experienced just in the last year or two. PFASs, what are known for shorthand as forever chemicals. We're coming to understand just how utterly pervasive they are, how utterly dangerous they are. Does that mean we're going to give up on some other, we'll let a bit more sewage in so long as we can do something to block some PFASs? That's what that paragraph in that letter means. Something else I'm doing a great deal of work on, antimicrobial resistance. And I must have a discussion with the Noble Lord the Minister at this some stage about this, because we now increasingly understand that pesticides are having impacts on causing antimicrobial resistance. And that's something I think the Noble Lord may not quite have yet grasped, but it's a really important technical area. Plastics, microplastics. We're starting to understand just what the impact of microplastics in our water and in our soils might be on human health, picking up the point that the Noble Lord Krebs made about we're not just talking about looking after the environment, we're talking about looking after what we actually live in. And I fear that the government, and I'm not sure even the benches around me, really grasp that our economy, our life, is entirely dependent on the environment. In the UK, we're using our share of the resources of 3 planets every year, and we only have 1 planet. And so, as the noble lady Baroness Parmenter pointed out, we did squeeze into, and my recollection is that we had to fight very hard to squeeze into the Environment Act some non-regression clauses. We absolutely have to strengthen so many things to head us in that 1 planet living direction. Now, continuing on that focus on biology, thinking of us as human animals in a world which we are entirely dependent on, what we have is an ecosystem that has developed over decades. We've talked about the importance of case law. We've talked about the way EU and UK approaches have been blended together into regulations. We've talked about, and I'm still trying to understand, what the interpretive effects are and whether they are or are not reflecting case law. But what this is absolutely the model of an ecosystem is perfect for this. And I'm going to cite, might surprise your Lordship's House, a recent article from Current Biology, peer-reviewed journal. And it was about the Permian-Triassic boundary, a period that's known as the Great Dying. And one of the things that was found in this period was that one species, one apparently quite insignificant little species, had a key role in the ecosystem. And when that died, the whole ecosystem fell apart. And I think as a metaphor for what the risk we're running with this bill, however good the noble lady Baroness Hayman's list is, what's missing? What's the keystone? What's the vital bit that makes everything else fall apart? The government cannot tell us. The government can only tell us it doesn't know. And that's where we are. Now, the noble lady Baroness Hayman referred to there's a lot, and we've all received many reports from NGOs and campaign groups. I'm just going to briefly refer to 2. And if the government doesn't want to believe me that the economy is a complete subset of the environment, it can just look at the economic costs. And there's a report from a coalition of NGOs led by the Wildlife and Countryside Link, the economic costs of the retained EU law bill. And it puts together the costs of £83 billion. If you don't want to count anything else, look at the cost of losing all these regulations. As so many people have talked about, the costs to human health, the costs to exports, the costs for landowners of uncertainty. And I will point to the noble Lord reflecting on landowners that, of course, financial services, gosh, what a surprise. They've been excluded from this. They've been protected by their own system in the Financial Services and Markets Bill. But I also just want to refer to the Marine Conservation Society, their analysis of this, because I think this really sums it up beautifully. I quote, "Our nature and conservation laws will not work." Close quotes. Quote, "The Environment Act 2021 sets out many goals. They are not intended to create binding obligations, but they'll become meaningless in the absence of strong underlying conservation laws that require effective assessment of potential impacts to be carried out before activities can be permitted." My Lords, I'm aware it's been a long debate, but a final concluding thought. We're talking about a sunset clause. If this bill goes through, we will be allowing the sun to set on a healthy environment, the prospects of making a healthy environment, the sun to set on the prospects of improving the parlous state of physical and mental health of this nation, the sun to set on the opportunity of many businesses, particularly farming and food businesses, to sell their premium products to the world. If we allow this bill through, the next day the sun will rise on a much darker country.
Lords.